Hey everyone, this is Dustin with TechX Cyber. We're a cybersecurity consulting firm helping our customers identify their risks, as well as coming and doing forensic investigations when their cybersecurity programs have failed, talking about collecting artifacts, telling the story of what happened, finding the cybersecurity vulnerabilities that were exploited, and then coming up with a game plan how to prevent those in the future. So if you have any questions or need some of that more information, you can check out techxcyber.com. Today I wanted to chat about multi-factor authentication, and more specifically I wanted to talk about, I'm going to call this one the MFA elephant in the room. There's something interesting that I'm observing, and I forget what the term is called, but when you're thinking about something and you start seeing it everywhere and you're like, why do I keep seeing this? This is happening to me with this topic about MFA. And what I'm seeing is there are the cyber pros, cybersecurity professionals on the internet are upset about MFA and how much I think we're relying on it. That's my takeaway. I saw somebody had a T-shirt that was like mocking how effective multi-factor is, or that they could beat your multi-factor, and that if they were so good they could get past it. And to me, I thought it was really silly that a cybersecurity professional is wearing the shirt, because it really the irony is extreme, because that shirt is not a risk-based approach t-shirt. That is a secure or not t-shirt. That is a black and white t-shirt. And if you ever listen to any of my conversations, I talk about making risk-based decisions, and on risk is a sliding scale. You know exactly where you fall. But when people are getting upset about MFA, they're making it seem like it's the only cybersecurity protection that we're going to put in place, and that we're just going to rely on it 100%. And then when it fails, they're going to make fun of us because it wasn't as great as we thought it was. That's kind of the strange scenario I'm seeing going on right now. So if you're a cybersecurity professional, you have that shirt, you should throw it away. And so, I'm just seeing all this really kind of like MFA discussion and people being very upset that we're relying on it. So I wanted to take a step back and talk about where is this mistake? Like, why is this rhetoric and this position that these cybersecurity professionals are taking kind of against MFA? Where is it coming from? What happens when we step back and actually think about what they're trying to say? So I'm going to try to interpret this shirt for the common listener out there, maybe not cybersecurity professional. So let me explain to you why this mentality is wrong. To do this, let's start by talking about attacks. So if you've ever listened to my discussions, I talk about two types. There's multiple types of threats. And one of the ones that gets focused on the most is the industry-specific threats. I'm in energy, so I have to worry about these threat actors coming after me. But if we use something more simple and something more high level, we can start to group two types of attacks into two categories. One that happens way more often and one that happens less often. So the one that happens way more often is called a threat of opportunity. This is when an attacker sends hundreds of emails or scans multiple IP block ranges looking for a victim, looking for an opportunity to go after somebody. They don't care who the company is. They don't care what you're selling. They don't care what your name is and where you work. What they want to do is get in and see some perceived opportunity that they can get into an email account and then create some sort of fraudulent financial transaction. So these are threats of opportunity, wide nets, large numbers of potential victims, and really just hoping a couple people click on maybe a malicious email. The other version or flavor of this is a targeted attack, which is going to happen a lot less. Okay, this is when an attacker has selected a company, they're using specific attack techniques to target this company, and they have some sort of perceived motivation that there is a reason why they want into this company's email account or network or whatever IT resource they're trying to get into. So there's a stark difference here. Okay, so those are the two types of attacks that tend to play out when we do forensic investigations. So I spent some time thinking about this, and I wanted to play out a scenario as if I'm a bad person, I'm a threat actor, I want to attack somebody, and I'm using a threat of opportunity standpoint to just kind of see who I can get out there. Okay, so I've blasted my emails, and let's say 3 victims accidentally clicked on something and provided me with their credentials. Okay, great. Let me go try to log in to see if these are going to work. If 2 of my victims don't have multi-factor authentication turned on, and one of them does, guess what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to spend time trying to break MFA on a company when I have footholds in 2 others. Okay, so that's something to think about, right? So even just having MFA on may make you a less attractive target, and a hacker might skip over you. Okay, so there is a roadblock in the way for hacker, right? So maybe the hacker doesn't have the technical skill to actually get you to break that multi-factor authentication. I want to talk a little bit about the special circumstance as well that does come into play. So let's remove that scenario. Let's say one victim got compromised. They have MFA. The hacker decides, okay, well then I'm going to try to break this MFA down. So for this to be successful, there has to be a very unique set of circumstances as well as timing to play out and other cybersecurity failures to get through MFA. So again, these people who are kind of getting upset with MFA, it's like, hey, this is actually not an easy thing to do. It takes a very specific set of circumstances. Can it be done? Yes. But having it on will reduce the likelihood that somebody will get in there. So when we talk about vulnerabilities and we talk about ways that hackers are coming after us, one of the things that we talk about is that makes something more or less severe is how many threat actors know that this vulnerability exists in your environment. So if you have MFA on, the number of hackers that are going to actually try to break your MFA is much lower than the number of hackers that would skip you and go to somebody else. Okay, so you've reduced the severity of the potential vulnerability to somebody getting into your email because you've turned on that MFA. So there's that first point. You know, there's that 99% number that gets thrown around, right? And so somebody thinks, well, I'm the 1% that can get through it. So let's think about that. So what does it look like if I am targeting a company that has MFA on that's gotten to them? Okay, I've gotten their password. I was able to steal their password, but I can't get in because of MFA. So now I have to start using targeted attack techniques. My wide net isn't going to work anymore. Okay, so now I also need a secondary failure in cybersecurity. I need somebody to provide me with an MFA code, or there's some other attacks that I could try to do, but most of the time it's going to be some other sort of phishing attempt to get that code, and then it has to be used immediately. So you need some constant communication. If somebody's emailing you and then you're waiting 5 minutes to send them a code and you're getting phished, it's not going to work. So this is that special circumstance that has to play out. And then the other thing is, let's say it does. It plays out, they get the MFA code, they're logged into email. Are we assuming that we've done no other cybersecurity best practices to protect ourselves? Because if we are, then the person wearing that shirt, good for them, keep wearing it. But what about turning on alerting for email systems when rules are created, or when new mailboxes are forwarded, things like that, right? So we can set up these alerts inside of our email providers so that when things like this happen, we get a notification to let us know something is going wrong. Okay, so this perfect set of scenario has to come out. The other thing is the mindset of the attacker has to be considered. Okay, for this MFA bypass to happen, the attacker has to be driven and motivated, and probably out of options. Again, if they've got 2 others that don't have MFA, those are going to be the ones that get targeted. There also has to be some perceived value. There has to be some benefit. Is the effort worth it as the attacker to go through and try to bypass this MFA? Again, this is why only a targeted attack is really going to show up here. If it's opportunistic, it may not be worth their time and they may move on. Something that we don't have statistics around, or that would be very challenging to get, is, you know, how many attacks does MFA actually stop? How many times can we attribute a potentially successful attack to MFA preventing it from actually going through? So that's a difficult thing to measure, but it does happen, right? So MFA helps us. So how do we measure that? We know that it is successful. And then thinking about how many times it's prevented these things, how many times have we actually stopped a hacker from coming in, so we can perceive the value more, and the hacker can see this and maybe move on quicker. By the time they see somebody has MFA, they may go on to a different different victim. And then again, we have to talk about the defense in depth. So if all of this plays out, the hacker gets in, and we've got no other protections in place, great, the hacker's going to run wild. But if we're doing our cybersecurity best practices, we've implemented defense in depth, we have other ways to alert us if multi-factor does fail. So I think the message here is that MFA is a great tool. It will it'll make a hacker look at you and maybe change their mind. It'll make somebody not target you because you have this protection in place. And so that's why we can consider it a pretty darn good thing. We really should have it on. It greatly reduces risk to an acceptable level. I think maybe that t-shirt should say MFA, reducing risk to an acceptable level and accepting that risk, instead of assuming that it's perfect. So that's my beef right now. Hopefully the security pros will get it together and realize that we don't just rely on one cybersecurity best practice. We have others behind it to help us, and that nothing is perfect, right? Everything is going to be able to the hackers are going to be able to find ways into things when they have the time, when they have the effort, when they have the technical capabilities. It's how we implement best practices over a sequence of time, over the different technology stacks that we have, so that we can get alerted and we can get notified when something bad is happening. So that is the chat today. I'm going to step off the soapbox. If you don't have multi-factor authentication, turn it on. Will it protect you 100% of the time? No. Will it help you significantly and make you less of a target? Yes. Will it reduce the severity of the vulnerabilities to unauthorized access? Yes. And can we do other things to support it and make it stronger and bolster it through other cybersecurity best practices? Yes. And signing off here, I'm Dustin with TechX Cyber. Thanks a lot.